is Wednesday, June 24. Welcome to CGN News. Prince Charles and Prime Minister Boris Johnson paid tribute to Britain's Caribbean community on Windrush Day, the 72nd anniversary of the arrival of a ship bringing hundreds of West Indian migrants to the United Kingdom. Johnson said those immigrants and their descendants had made a fantastic contribution to Britain, and Prince Charles said the country owed them a debt of gratitude. Windrush Day marks the arrival of the Empire Windrush, a former troop ship that sailed from Jamaica to England in 1948, carrying hundreds of people who had been invited by the British government to help rebuild the war-shattered nation. Many of the new arrivals had fought against the Nazis in World War II and came to work as nurses, railway workers, and in other key jobs. They and other Commonwealth immigrants who came to Britain before 1973 had an automatic right to settle in the UK, but decades later, thousands fell victim to the conservative, hostile immigration policies. In 2018, it was revealed that people who had lived legally in Britain for decades had been denied housing, jobs, or medical treatment because they could not prove their status. More than 100 were detained or deported. The government apologized, reviewed thousands of cases, and set up a commission to look into what went wrong. Its report found that there had been, quote, systematic operational failings, end quote, at the Home Office. The government also agreed to compensate Windrush victims. As of last month, only 60 people out of 12,000 who may be eligible had received payments from the compensation program set up a year earlier. The Trump administration has reported that it is extending a ban on green cards issued outside the United States until the end of the year and adding many temporary work visas to the freeze, including those used heavily by technology companies and multinational corporations. A senior official who spoke to reporters on condition of anonymity estimated the restrictions will free up 525,000 jobs for Americans. The ban, while temporary, would amount to major restructuring of legal immigration if made permanent, a goal that had eluded the administration before the pandemic. Long-term changes targeting asylum seekers and high-tech workers are also being sought. The ban on new visas applies to H-1B visas, which are widely used by major American and Indian technology company workers and their families, H-2B visas for non-agricultural seasonal workers, J-1 visas for cultural exchanges, and L-1 visas for managers and other key employees of multinational corporations. Trump imposed a 60-day ban on green cards issued abroad in April, which was set to expire next Monday. In Jamaica, there has been significant reports that some persons who have entered the country since the borders were reopened on June 1 are not adhering to self-quarantine measures. The government is looking to enforce the $1 million fine for persons found in breach of the established orders and protocols. Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton issued the warning as he responded to questions during a recent COVID-19 press briefing. Under the Disaster Risk Management Act, persons who refuse to follow the established orders and protocols, including curfews and stay-at-home orders that are in place to limit the spread of the coronavirus on the island, can be fined up to $1 million or 6 months imprisonment. Jamaicans who have returned to the island as of June 1 must self-quarantine at home for 2 weeks. However, there are reports that some persons have been flouting the law. Meanwhile, at least 56 persons, including 6 non-nationals, have tested positive for COVID-19 since the reopening of the country's borders on June 1. The majority of the confirmed positive cases are from the United States, where the virus is raging out of control in large parts of that country. Overseas now, police in Nigeria have rescued more than 100 people they say were locked in a rice processing factory and forced to work throughout a coronavirus lockdown. From the end of March, the men were allegedly not allowed to leave the mill in the northern city of Kano. The workers were promised an additional $13 a month on top of their $72 monthly salary. Those who did not accept were threatened to be fired. 5 managers at the Indian-owned mill, Popular Farms, have been arrested. Police spokesman Abdullahi Haruna reported that the plant had now been shut down and the owners were being investigated for holding the men against their will. He said that 126 people had been found, although workers said there were 300. Some of the men say they were forced to work most of the time during their incarceration with little food. The police were tipped off about the men's plight after one of them called a human rights organization. Nigerian businesses were asked to close up shop in late March as part of government guidelines to halt the spread of coronavirus. A powerful earthquake has shaken buildings and caused panic in 6 Mexican states, killing at least 6 people. All of the reported fatalities occurred in the state of Oaxaca, where the quake's epicenter was located. Buildings also shook in Mexico City, 700 kilometers from the epicenter. The government's alert system worked well, giving residents, many of whom were at home due to a coronavirus lockdown, time to get outdoors. It comes less than 3 years after an earthquake left hundreds dead and thousands homeless in Mexico City. About 200 houses in the tourist town of La Crucecita were damaged on Tuesday, a local official said. All 6 fatalities were killed in the collapse of one of the houses in the town in Oaxaca. 13 hospitals have also reported damage. 6 hours after the quake, more than 400 aftershocks had been recorded across the region, the strongest magnitude at 4.6. The recommendations of a review into the Windrush scandal will be implemented in full, Home Secretary Priti Patel has said. The report criticized the Home Office after those who came to the UK from Commonwealth countries were wrongly told they were in Britain illegally. Mrs. Patel also acknowledged that compensation payments to those who had suffered had been far too slow. Speaking in the House of Commons, Mrs. Patel said the Windrush Lessons Learned review, led by Wendy Williams, an inspector of constabulary, had been damning about the conduct of the Home Office and, quote, unequivocal about the institutional thoughtlessness towards race and the history of the Windrush generation, end quote. Ms. Patel told MPs that so far 12,000 people had been granted documentation by the Windrush Task Force, including over 5,900 grants of citizenship. She said as of the end of March, more than £360,000 had been awarded in compensation and that more than £1 million had been offered in claims so far. That's it for CGN News. I'm Scott Wilson. Thanks for watching.